academic thinking skills together and apply them in this unit to evaluate the overall strength or weakness of a speaker's argument. What is an argument? An argument is made up of all the claims that speakers or authors make to support their position. Speakers use these claims in a statement or argument to convince us to agree with their position. So, very often in an argument, the purpose is to persuade. What should we do to evaluate a speaker's argument? Well, we plan to lead you through an evaluation process in this instructional activity. We will use this checklist of items to evaluate the discussion that you watched about happiness. You'll see many familiar terms on the checklist. We won't teach you a lot of new things in this unit. Instead, as we said, we want to use the skills we have built throughout this course so far to learn how to evaluate an argument. To start off with, we're going to focus on filling in the details. So, what is the first step in evaluating the speaker's argument? Remember when we analyzed the reliability of sources in an earlier unit? One of the first questions we asked was, who is the speaker or author? Is he or she credible? Let's review what we know about Dr. Pollyanna Feliz. She is introduced as a psychologist and a leading expert on the science of happiness. We also know that she was invited to appear on a TV news show. Now, the next thing we need to decide is, what is the purpose of the interview? Remember PI, persuade, inform, entertain? Here, we can look at the purpose of both the host and the guest expert. For the host, think of the tone and facial expressions she uses throughout the interview. Sometimes she rolls her eyes or laughs or appears to be confused. I'd say her purpose is to entertain. Dr. Feliz, on the other hand, tries to present information from studies and specific stories about happiness. Her purpose is to inform. And what was Dr. Feliz's argument in the interview? What was the main point that she was trying to support? In this case, that means, what is she trying to inform us about? She wants to inform us that there are two types of happiness, synthetic and natural. Despite impact bias, our psychological immune system uses synthetic happiness to make us feel better. This is the overall argument Dr. Feliz shares with us. Next, what is the tone of the interview? Let's start with our host, Sandy Sandbrain. At the beginning of the interview, we can use words like curious and sarcastic to describe her. She is certainly entertaining throughout. Dr. Feliz maintains a light-hearted tone throughout the interview. At the beginning, she is playful along with the host. Then, as she starts to share her knowledge, she is passionate and lively. By the end of the interview, it's clear that she is fascinated with the topic of happiness, and she shares her enthusiasm with the audience. We have our details on the first three categories. Now we need to make a judgment about each category. Is it strong, average, or weak? Let's go back to the speaker's credibility. What do you think about Dr. Feliz? Well, she does have the title of doctor, which means she has studied psychology a lot. She also knows enough about happiness to be considered an expert, and TV news shows usually only invite guests who know what they're talking about. But don't you wish we knew more about her? Is she currently a university professor? How many studies on happiness has she conducted and published? Let's mark this as average. Now, let's evaluate the purpose of both the host and guest expert. Here, a strong purpose is clearly stated, whereas a weaker purpose might not be so clear. Do you think Sandy Sandbrain's and Dr. Felice's purposes are strong? I think their purposes to entertain and to inform us are very clear. Let's put it in the strong column. Next is argument. What makes an argument strong or weak? In a strong argument, all of the secondary claims are closely related and give support to the overall claim or argument. In a weaker argument, the speaker might go off topic and include information that is not relevant to the main argument. So, how about our interview? Is the argument weak or strong? Dr. Felice certainly gives us a lot of information. However, much of it is quite general, and she doesn't go into great detail on any specific piece of evidence. This is quite common on TV news shows, by the way. Average is our best choice here. The last thing we're going to talk about together is the tone. A strong tone is appropriate for the topic and keeps the audience's interest. Remember the classroom discussion about the life of a model from earlier in this course? The tone started out as humorous, as the model kind of made fun of herself, and then became more serious as she talked about gender and racial discrimination. A neutral tone, or a tone that makes it difficult for an audience to want to keep watching, is weak. Take a moment to evaluate the tone of our video. Both Sandy Sandbrain's and Dr. Felice's use of tone is strong. Their humor, passion, and enthusiasm keep our interest and make the interview enjoyable. You see on our chart that there are 3 unfinished parts. We need to decide whether our host and guest expert might have any biases. Then we need to pay attention to whether they rely on facts or mainly give their opinion. Finally, we need to analyze the evidence that is presented the way we have already learned in this course. In the next skill practice, you'll have the opportunity to fill in the beginning of our checklist in more detail and complete the rest of it on your own. Good luck.